Elizabeth and Francis walking through Elizabeth's neighborhood. Elizabeth is well known in the neighborhood, so lots of people were staring, and others were hailing and greeting her. Some too were whispering. Elizabeth was known to be one of the decent girls in the neighborhood, so I guess they were surprised to see her with this fine, cute, irresistible-looking guy with his luggage, following her so closely. They also noticed how uncomfortable he looked walking in that low-income community. He looked rich, so what was he doing there? Elizabeth led him to one old building and led her into a room. Their story begins. "Francis, you can keep your bag over here. This is where I live. You can stay here with me. As you can see, it's not as fancy and luxurious as your parents' house, but at least you will have a roof over your head till you are capable of doing the needful. Come in and sit down." "Thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing me here. What would I have done? Losing my parents and all their properties still feels like a dream. I'm waiting to wake up from. Elizabeth, you were a good servant to my parents. You served us so well. And now you are helping me like this, thank you. Francis, listen, I don't want you to think too much. All you have to do is to concentrate on your studies so that you can get a better job. Who knows, you may be able to pay off your parents' debt and take the properties back." "Elizabeth, I don't think that will ever be possible, and the thought of it scares me. There is no money to continue my education. I think I will have to drop out." "No, that won't happen, Francis. You see that 1 year remaining. You will go to school and complete it. Nothing will make me proud than you getting back your property. And I know your parents will be proud of you wherever they are. I trust you can do it, and I am here to support you every way through." Very soon holidays were over and Francis had to go back to school. Elizabeth woke up early in the morning to prepare a bath for Francis, so he can get on the first bus to be in school early. She came back to the room to call him to go out there and take a bath. Francis went outside, came back inside, but went out again and came inside again. Elizabeth, where is the bathroom door?" Elizabeth stood there for a while, but she understood what was going on. Elizabeth led him out. She showed him a public bath behind their building. "Francis, this is where everybody in this neighborhood use. You better be fast before people overtakes you." "Elizabeth, you want me enter this thing? I can't have my bath here." "Francis, I know you are not used to a place like this, but I don't think we have a choice. Let me leave you to it. I have to iron your shirt for you. Make sure you finish early before people will come and chase you out." Elizabeth left Francis. He had no other option than to go and bath. When he came in, Elizabeth was still ironing his shirt. Elizabeth, I think you should let me do this myself. I am no longer your small boss. Allow me do things myself, please." Elizabeth chuckled and shook her head and said, "Francis, you are my guest, let me serve you." Elizabeth took Francis to the bus stop. Elizabeth couldn't help but laugh as she watched Francis being pushed around as he struggles to secure a seat. She said to herself, he is adjusting so fast. She went back home after the bus left. Francis came home looking really exhausted. Elizabeth serves him food and water. He was sitting on the only plastic chair in the room listening to an old radio. He tried so hard before getting a signal. Elizabeth came with an envelope. "Francis, I withdrawn my savings today. Take this for your fees and transportation for a month. I will also use this to start water business." Francis replied, "No, Elizabeth, I can't take money from you. You've done enough by allowing me to stay here. I will hustle and pay my fees myself. I was going to tell you. I will join the boys to wash cars when returned from school." Elizabeth interfered. "You will do no such thing, so that they will start teaching you all the bad things they do, right? Listen, Francisi will support. All you have to do is study hard. Are we clear? Now you will take this." Elizabeth handed the money to him. "Thank you, Elizabeth," Francis said. Elizabeth started the sachet water business. The water business was going so well because it was a dry season. Francis was able to complete the first and second semester without financial difficulties because the water business was doing well for them. When Francis was on vacation, Elizabeth agreed for him to join her in the business. But the weather condition was changing, so the business was going down. It was getting to rainy season, so the weather became cold. This made their business go down. Francis was always concerned on how things will be, because he was expecting the business to move as it was. So that's they could afford his next semester fees and registration for his final exams. This thoughts was always on his mind when school resumed. They couldn't afford his school fees, so Francis tried calling and contacting some of his old friends and families, but none of them were willing to support. Final year students were to go on a field trip. But Francis knew there was no money, so he didn't inform Elizabeth. He kept on calling and texting family friends, but none of them replied or answered him. The deadline for payment for the trip passed. He couldn't tell Elizabeth. T. Francis was home alone and was lost in his thoughts. He said to himself, "How long can I stay at burden to Elizabeth? She takes care of everything. She feeds me, pay bills, give me transport to school, and she doesn't want me to work. We have spent all her savings and even the capital for her business. What is going to happen now? Oh goodness, help us." Since business was not going so well for Elizabeth, she decided to go home early on this day. When she got home, she saw Francis sitting. Lost in his thoughts, she asked him, "Francis, why are you home so early? What happened at school?" Francis didn't want to talk, but Elizabeth made him. "Beth," she yelled. "Francis, tell me what's wrong. You know you can tell me everything, right? Are you sick or something?" Francis cleared his throat to talk. "Actually, Elizabeth, I didn't go to school today. I've been home since morning." Elizabeth asked, "What did you say?" Francis continued, "Yes. My class went for a field trip I couldn't pay, so I didn't go." Elizabeth yelled at him, "Have you been paying for anything in this house? Why didn't you tell me?" Francis replied, "Elizabeth, calm down. It was nothing. I'm not a child. You know I am that good. I don't need to go for a field trip before I pass my exams. I don't need it. So it's fine." Elizabeth looked worried, but they had already been done. Francis wanted to cheer her, so he asked her about business. But she didn't answer. He asked again, "Elizabeth, are you okay? You look tired. See, I can prepare hot bath for you. I already prepared food so you can eat later." Elizabeth looked angry, so Francis didn't say anything again. He watched her as she entered the room. Francis said, "Sorry," Elizabeth replied from the room. "You are not forgiven. Make sure you don't lose focus. Do you hear me?" Francis chuckled and said, "Yes, ma'am." The water business was failing, and they had already spent their savings on essential bills. Now Francis needed to pay for his exam registration, but his relatives couldn't help. He was in tears, and Elizabeth, who was asleep, woke up. She asked what was wrong, wondering if she had done something to upset him. Francis just shook his head. They sat together on the bed, and Elizabeth said, "Francis, we only have each other. Please tell me what's wrong so we can face it together." Francis' gaze lingered on Elizabeth, a weighty silence hanging in the air before he spoke. "Our final exams are just around the corner," he began, his voice tinged with a hint of desperation. "I had hoped my uncle would come through for me, but he let me down. I should have told you sooner, but now we only have 3 months left. I honestly don't know how we're going to get the money." Elizabeth's expression shifted from concern to surprise. "Why didn't you confide in me?" she asked, her voice laced with a mix of worry and reproach. "Since your parents passed away, have any of your uncles ever truly looked out for you? Why would you think they'd help now? You should have told me much earlier." Francis's eyes fell, a shadow of regret crossing his face. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth. The amount is substantial, and I didn't want to burden you further. Besides, I genuinely believed he wouldn't disappoint me like this. I truly am sorry. I think this is where it ends for me. I'll have to drop out. We simply can't afford it." Elizabeth's voice rose, laced with defiance. "Nonsense, drop out? You wouldn't dare." Francis's shoulders slumped, his voice barely above a whisper. "How? We can't afford it. I should have just stopped earlier." Elizabeth's eyes met his, her voice firm and resolute. "Look at me, Francis. You will finish this school, do you hear me? Now, how much is the money?" The weight of 30,000. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Money. Everything will be 30,000. Francis finally choked out, the words barely a whisper. Elizabeth recoiled, her voice sharp with disbelief. "What, 30,000? Where am I going to get that kind of money from?" Silence descended, thick and suffocating. The weight of the sum pressed down on them both until Elizabeth broke it, her voice softer but firm. "Francis, you will complete school. I assure you, within 2 months I will raise the money for you. You will have to deal with things in the school till I get the money." Francis, overwhelmed, began to cry uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face as he tried to thank Elizabeth. Elizabeth gently consoled him, offering comfort and reassurance. They hugged tightly. A kiss sealed their pact, and in that moment their connection deepened, a physical expression of their intertwined destinies. As they were on their way out to their duties, an unusual silence filled the air, hinting at the unspoken burdens and sacrifices that lay ahead. The morning sun cast long shadows as Francis and Elizabeth walked in silence. Francis fidgeted, the events of the previous night weighing heavily on his mind. About last night," he began tentatively. Elizabeth cut him off, her voice firm. I don't want to talk about it. Francis nodded, the unspoken words hanging between them. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Elizabeth broke it, her tone inquisitive. Was it your first time? She paused, then added, because while I was working for you, I never saw you with any other girl. I even thought you weren't into girls. A wave of confession washed over Elizabeth. That's because I liked you. I have always loved you, Elizabeth. I didn't know how to tell you because of my parents. Plus, I wasn't sure if you liked me too. I guess I was scared of rejection. Elizabeth stopped walking and Francis halted beside her, his heart pounding in his chest. Don't you love me? He asked, his voice laced with vulnerability. If I waited this long, I don't think you will reject me, right? Elizabeth sighed, her expression a mix of tenderness and resolve. Francis, you have to concentrate on your studies for now. I will give you an answer only when you secure a job. Her words hung in the air, a bittersweet promise for a future that was yet to be earned. Elizabeth's transformation was hard to miss. She began curating her wardrobe with care, each outfit a statement. Evenings that once belonged to quiet domesticity were now filled with late-night outings. Francis couldn't ignore the shift. Each time he tried to voice his concerns, Elizabeth would brush him aside, her eyes glazed over as if he were speaking a foreign language. Francis was left to grapple with a growing unease, his complaints echoing unheard in their once shared space. One afternoon, Francis's worst fears materialized before his eyes. He spotted Elizabeth emerging from a sleek private car. The scene unfolded in slow motion. Elizabeth and a man locked in an embrace, exchanging intimate touches. A surge of anger propelled Francis forward. He stormed towards them, his voice raw as he called out Elizabeth's name. Elizabeth turned, a flicker of surprise in her eyes quickly replaced by a calculated composure. "Oh, Francis, you're here," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Baby, meet my brother, Francis." "Francis, this is my Superman, Adinkra." The words "my brother" hung in the air, each syllable a sharp sting. Francis reeled, the world tilting on its axis. In that moment, something within him began to unravel. The water business was failing, and they had already spent their savings on essential bills. Now Francis needed to pay for his exam registration, but his relatives couldn't help. He was in tears, and Elizabeth, who was asleep, woke up. She asked what was wrong, wondering if she had done something to upset him. Francis just shook his head. They sat together on the bed, and Elizabeth said, "Francis, we only have each other. Please tell me what's wrong so we can face it together." Francis' gaze lingered on Elizabeth, a weighty silence hanging in the air before he spoke. "Our final exams are just around the corner," he began, his voice tinged with a hint of desperation. "I had hoped my uncle would come through for me, but he let me down. I should have told you sooner, but now we only have 3 months left. I honestly don't know how we're going to get the money." Elizabeth's expression shifted from concern to surprise. "Why didn't you confide in me?" she asked, her voice laced with a mix of worry and reproach. "Since your parents passed away, have any of your uncles ever truly looked out for you? Why would you think they'd help now? You should have told me much earlier." Francis's eyes fell, a shadow of regret crossing his face. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth. The amount is substantial, and I didn't want to burden you further. Besides, I genuinely believed he wouldn't disappoint me like this. I truly am sorry, I think this is where it ends for me. I'll have to drop out. We simply can't afford it." Elizabeth's voice rose, laced with defiance. "Nonsense, drop out? You wouldn't dare." Francis's shoulders slumped, his voice barely above a whisper. "How? We can't afford it. I should have just stopped earlier." Elizabeth's eyes met his, her voice firm and resolute. "Look at me, Francis. You will finish this school, do you hear me? Now, how much is the money?" The weight of 30,000. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Money? Everything will be 30,000. Francis finally choked out, the words barely a whisper. Elizabeth recoiled, her voice sharp with disbelief. "What, 30,000? Where am I going to get that kind of money from?" Silence descended, thick and suffocating. The weight of the sum pressed down on them both until Elizabeth broke it, her voice softer but firm. "Francis, you will complete school. I assure you, within 2 months I will raise the money for you. You will have to deal with things in the school till I get the money." Francis, overwhelmed, began to cry uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face as he tried to thank Elizabeth. Elizabeth gently consoled him, offering comfort and reassurance. They hugged tightly, A kiss sealed their pact, and in that moment their connection deepened, a physical expression of their intertwined destinies. As they were on their way out to their duties, an unusual silence filled the air, hinting at the unspoken burdens and sacrifices that lay ahead. They moved in with Adinkra. Before Francis left for school one morning, he heard Adinkra and Elizabeth arguing. Later that day, Francis found Elizabeth when she returned from school, her face marred with fresh bruises. His blood ran cold. "What happened to you?" he demanded, his voice laced with fury.
Did he hit you again? Where is he?
"I will teach him a lesson he won't forget." But Elizabeth stood her ground, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and defiance. "You will do no such thing," she insisted. "I have warned you to stay away from our issues." Desperation edged into Francis's voice. "Elizabeth, I have paid the school bills. I will write my final paper tomorrow. Let's leave, please," he begged. "I am the one you are doing this for, and I can't allow you to suffer like this." Francis's heart ached. To suffer like this, he thought. "It kills me when I see you like this." "Leave here and go where?" Elizabeth retorted, her voice laced with a hint of desperation. "Back to the trenches, are you all right?" Francis sighed. "At least we will find peace there, and I can now start working, and you will be mine again." Elizabeth's voice hardened. "I told you to forget about me. You are my brother." Francis retorted, "You know I'm not. Just understand and let's leave." Months later, Adinkra's business partner visited, bringing his daughter along. She and Awahini kind of connected and exchanged contacts. In another scene, Doofy, harboring a secret fondness for Elizabeth's brother Francis, she decided to visit Elizabeth. Her intention was to let Elizabeth help her talk to him, since he doesn't really give her the chance to flow with him as she wants. Elizabeth, a confidant of Francis, pulled him aside one day. "Francis," she began, her voice laced with concern, "you need to take Doofy seriously." Francis stared stunned. "Stop looking at me and forget about me," Elizabeth said. With a soft voice, Francis said, "I can't, Elizabeth. I don't know what you did to me back then, but it's like my soul is tied to you. I love you, Elizabeth. It's you I want." Francis, however, found himself in a complicated situation. He was out with Doofy, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was too high maintenance to be his life partner. Yet he felt trapped, as if it were too late to back out, especially with Doofy growing increasingly clingy. After his mandatory service, Francis secured a job and moved into his own place. Just as he was settling in, Doofy paid him a visit one of the days, making it clear that she wanted to continue their relationship and would want them to take it to the next step. She tried seducing him to get him sleep with her, but Francis stood firm, refusing. Doofy confronted him, her voice laced with frustration. "What is it now, Francis? You claimed you didn't want to disrespect your sister and her boyfriend while you were staying in their house. Now that we are alone in your apartment, you're still rejecting me?" Francis sighed. "Doofy, let's wait until we get married. I don't want to sleep with you until I marry you." Doofy's eyes lit up. "Oh, and I can't wait to be your wife." She paused, a hopeful glint in her eyes. "Wait, are you proposing? Where's the ring?" Francis was caught off guard, unable to explain himself. Shortly after, Doofy's father called him to congratulate him for the engagement. "What engagement, sir?" Francis asked. Doofy's father chuckled and said, "Doofy told me you just proposed. Congratulations, hang up." Later, Francis found himself explaining the whole engagement situation to Elizabeth. She listened intently before advising him that it was a good thing to do. Francis didn't seem too pleased. "We have a wedding to plan, brother," Elizabeth reminded him, his voice laced with concern. A week to the wedding, Elizabeth received a call from Francis, requesting him to meet at a hotel for a discussion on the hall for the wedding reception. "Francis, what is going on? What are we doing here?" Elizabeth asked, her eyes darting around the opulent suite. "Elizabeth, I want us to have a cool time together." "Come sit," Francis replied, a strange glint in his eyes. He poured a drink for Elizabeth, and they sat in silence for a while, the tension palpable. Finally, Francis broke the silence. "Pakna, I want to thank you. I hadn't had a proper moment to truly speak with you to properly thank you. You with your overbearing boyfriend and me, stuck with a clingy girlfriend. I've missed you, so I arranged for you to be here, hoping we could finally talk." They exchanged a smile, a silent understanding passing between them.